What I wanted to talk about actually is that I don't want to keep hammering this point home, but I think it's absolutely clear to me at this point. And I just want to take a inventory of this. I want to kind of see where everyone's at. One's in the chat if your entire timeline is Hitlerism. Not your entire one, but like every other tweet you're starting to see is straight up just Hitlerism. Because I want to know if I'm the only person who's seeing this. Okay, I'm glad everyone else is seeing this. Now, if let me ask another question, all right? One's in the chat if more often than not, this Hitlerism is explicitly anti-communist, meaning it's not just anti-Semitism and racial hatred, it also is directly knocking on Marxism and communism. Because I think I've noticed that too. And when you put two and two together, we have to ask a basic question. If Zog was in power, if the all-controlling Jews were in power, if cultural Marxist Bolshevik Jews were in power, would they allow for that to happen? Would they allow for Nazism and the Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracy theory to like spread like wildfire? Would they just like allow that to happen? Because there's a lot of neo-Nazis who look at it like, we're so back, and they don't realize at the very least this is being deliberately boosted. This is being deliberately given the spotlight. I'm not saying all neo-Nazis are feds. I'm saying that the ones who give neo-Nazis all the attention are the feds. And why are they counter-signaling us? Why do so many of these tweets appear to be counter-signaling us? Because it's simple. We are more of a danger and more of a threat than neo-Nazis are. And then ask yourself a question, how can that be? How can the establishment be both Zionist and neo-Nazi? Well, I'll tell you why. It's for the same reason I believe the most amount of pings on 4chan's poll board come from Israel. You see, look, I want to give a message to my Muslim brothers. I want to give a message to my Christian brothers. I understand the disgust and the hatred you feel for seeing what these Zionist monsters are doing in Gaza. Trust me, I understand it. My family background, I was raised understanding that. It's in my blood, it's in my DNA. There's nobody who's more anti-Zionist than me. But trust me when I say, when you allow your hatred of Zionism to spill over into the direction of trying to rehabilitate Adolf Hitler, the Nazis, spread racial hatred, and even, yes, spread hatred against the Jews, you are playing into the hands of the Zionists, and they are doing it very deliberately. Again, the neo-Nazi board on 4chan poll, the #1 source of traffic from there is Israel itself. You see, the Zionists and the Mossad are the ones spreading the revival of Nazism. And why are they doing that? They're doing it because it reinforces the ideology and worldview upon which Zionism is based. This is a worldview that wants Jews to be isolated, the center of attention, and the center of the world. It wants Jews to be everyone's focus, because the whole ideology of Zionism is a false messiah. Zionism is a false messiah for the Jewish people. And they're basically trying to say that this is what people don't understand. The Jews of the world are not united. The diaspora in America in particular, the Jewish diaspora in America, they have not been fully Zionified, if you can call it that, right? Now, they have vaguely pro-Israel sentiment, sure, but it's starting to tilt in the other direction, and there's an increasing estrangement. Put it this way, Aiden Ross, he's a Jew, right? What does Aiden Ross give a fuck about Israel? Put that into perspective. And Zionists are fighting to win over all the Jews in the world fully and get their full loyalty. And the best way you do that to justify the ideology of Zionism is to promote neo-Nazism. Now, there's a second edge to that blade, because what the Zionists are doing is they're hitting two birds with one stone. And this is now for my Muslim brothers and sisters living in the West. I have to tell you something. When you are promoting the far right, you're doing the Zionist work, because in addition to what I just told you, the goal of the far right is anti-immigration, #1. And I'm not a fan of immigration myself, but in the European context and in the American context, this will translate into enmity toward Muslims. They want the Muslims out. They want Muslims out of Europe, and they want Muslims out of America. Why do the Zionists want that? The Zionists want to get rid of all of the Muslim voices in America and in Europe, because this is the #1 source of pressure. And I repeat that, the #1 source of pressure internally upon civil life in Western societies against Zionism. Make no mistake, the Muslim community in Europe and in America almost single-handedly is the reason why Israel is getting so much negative PR on the internet. Muslims are the second largest religion in the world, okay? And they used to have a pretty negligible presence in the West. So my fellow Muslims, I am not pro-immigration, first of all. But if we are going to make a life for ourselves in the West, which is something I'm doing, we need to adapt Islam to the countries in which we live. And we need to keep fighting, because Islam as a religion makes it very clear that you fight for justice no matter what land you're in. And we need to be like that one black guy in Robin Hood, the Robin Hood movie. Robin Hood is fighting for justice, and the black stranger, who's a Muslim, by the way, in the movie, so I'm saying, helps out Robin Hood, because he's fighting for justice no matter what land he's in. He's fighting against Satan. So Muslims in America, you need to be cognizant of your role. You need to be cognizant of the fact that Zionists are willing to promote neo-Nazis to get rid of you. Because what are the neo-Nazis going to ultimately do? The neo-Nazis are going to promote anti-Muslim hatred. They're going to promote anti-Jewish hatred. The Jews go to Israel. The Muslims get kicked out. Israel stands unopposed. And then you ask the question, well, wouldn't that make Western countries hate Israel? No, it wouldn't. Because the anti-Jewish sentiment will be fine as long as the boundaries established. This is part of the Zionist ideology. We Jews will stay in Israel. You have the West, and you can LARP your identity Europa. You can have your neoclassical statue-worshipping homosexual trad orgies, and we'll be in Tel Aviv having our pride parades, and we come to a mutual understanding, and we are going to work together to destroy the Muslims and to destroy the Chinese and to destroy the Russians and to destroy all of the enemies of Western imperialism and colonialism. So you see, this is the match made in heaven between the Nazis and the Zionists that's going on right now. And why it is you're seeing on the X app this overwhelmingly pro-Hitlerite sentiment, it's not an organic response to the outrages being committed by the Zionists in Gaza. I promise you it's not. You are not going to see things that they will not tolerate you seeing. Period. And there's exceptions. Jackson's an exception. But me and Jackson, who are both going against the tide...
There is another element to this too. A revival of neo-Nazism is about the only thing that can corrupt and destroy MAGA or any genuine right-wing force.
Absolutely. And we saw this in 2015. I remember it. You know, I'm going to be honest, guys. In 2015, even I thought, is MAGA fascist? Because 2016, like 2024, it's a very decisive election. And what the enemy does is they boost the Nazis to define the aroma, the smell, and the context of the dissident politics, associating it with Nazism. I also want to say, people might ask the question, Haas, it's your fault. Why weren't you there spreading communism among the right wing? Now you've let the Nazis win? Let me tell you the truth. And I'm not here to throw a tantrum, because I've made peace with objective reality, and I'm confident in the path that I'm going on. But I tried to resolve Alexander Kojev's dialectic of desire between the tyrant and the philosopher. I tried to be the philosopher who interfaced with the MAGA tyrant. And the amount of sabotage, the amount of attacks, the amount of threats that I was getting from leftists was too overwhelming. Why was it too overwhelming? Because our rivals on the right wing were starting to team up with the leftists in a pincer movement, and we need to be wiser than that. We're not going to fall into a strategic blunder like that. So this is why we couldn't take over the MAGA movement in its established form, because we were fighting a front from two sides. We have grifter right-wingers that are our rivals, and then we have leftists who are relentlessly doing everything in their power to bring us down. Now, the leftists are fine with what's going on now. The leftists are seeing the overwhelming dominance of the neo-Nazis, and they knew that that was our enemies. We were trying to fight those people on their own turf. And who sabotaged us? The leftists. But they've always done that. They did that to Lenin. They did that to Marx. They did that to Lenin. They did that to Stalin. They did that to Mao. They've always done that. So I'm not going to whine and complain about it. It's just the objective reality. So we turned our sword toward the right. We turned our sword toward the right because we realized The only reason leftists have the power that they do over us is because of the way they team up with these fucking right-wing Nazis. So when we annihilate the neo-Nazi menace, it'll be turkey season for the leftists. You understand? We will trample over them with ease, no problem. But we need to knock out the right wing first. And by the way, the right wing might be dealing with these leftists, and we're gonna remember who our enemies were. Remember that, and we're not gonna come save them. They did that to Ernest Talman, exactly. Absolutely, that's what they did. They've done this to everyone. We have to be smart about it and not complain. And that's not what. So that's what we're doing. We're now going against the right wing, because why should we allow leftists to blackmail us with these pieces of chicken neck right-wing grifting bitches? Why should we let them do that and use them as hound dogs to unleash upon us? We're not going to allow that. We're going to destroy and batter into the ground these neo-Nazi scum. It's a strategic threat. It's an existential enemy. By the way, historically, our enemy has always been the Nazis. The liberal imperialists, of course. The Nazis are a branch of that. But our intention has always been to march against the right wing. Need people to understand this. From the very moment MAGA communism was conceived, our intention was to build and muster the necessary forces with which to march against the right wing. And that was the whole point. And who ruined it? Leftists did. But that's fine, because that's literally behind us. There's nothing we could do about it. It's the objective truth. It's the objective reality. Leftists have always fulfilled this role for all communists in history. Now we are out of time. The Nazis are here. And when I say the Nazis are here, I don't mean we're going to get Adolf Hitler and the Nazis and that fascism is going to be in power. I mean to say the Nazis are here in the sense that the feds are here. The feds won. The feds won. Now the feds are promoting an explicitly anti-communist Nazism, openly Nazism, promoting all of the theories that were buzzing around 2015. And now this is what we have to deal with. And we can't spend our time complaining about the leftists who bear responsibility for this situation, because this is a problem that's now right in front of us. We have to clean it up and deal with it somehow. We have to take responsibility for the situation that we're in. We're not taking responsibility in the sense of taking on the guilt for creating it. Leftists are the ones who created this situation. I'm not saying leftists should have joined with us hand in hand. But had leftists just left us alone and just ignored us, the neo-Nazis would not have gotten the high ground that they now have. The neo-Nazis would not be able to be so uncontestedly dominate all forces of dissidence. I mean, leftism is... I need to understand this, because I know this in real life. Let me put this into better perspective. If you're a young, military-age, military-capable young man, who may or may not be strategically the most decisive demographic for any political change, your first instinct, just to be cool, just to be in touch, just to be vogue, just to be with the boys, just to be, is to be a fucking Nazi. And I'm not saying to be a part of a Nazi organization, but it's like, you guys need to realize it's not fringe anymore. If you have a minimum of being in touch with reality, it's like there's two kinds of people nowadays. There's narcs who are uncool and are just teachers' pets, whatever. And then in the boys group chat, it's like, well, Hitler wasn't that bad after all, right? And we were the ones providing an alternative to that. But the narcs were our biggest enemies. Guys, when I said leftists were the #1 enemy like 1 or 2 years ago, by the way, this is why. Because leftists are the ones who allowed this situation to now happen, where it's cool to be a Nazi. It's cool to think Hitler is cool. It's cool to think the Bolsheviks were created by the Jews. It's cool to think that communism sucks. And then look, I'm not here to moralize and engage in pearl clutching, but what I am here to say is that there is no political force in this country right now talking about debt forgiveness. Who's going to forgive the debts? There's no force in this country talking about a land tax, like Henry George put it. By the way, Marx wasn't against Henry George's idea, because Marx even said, we proposed this in the Communist Manifesto. He was just against the idea of Georgism as a solution to all the world's problems. But the tax on land, the value tax on land, the single tax as they call it, the land value tax. This is one of the ways we solve the housing crisis. Well, who's talking about it? Nobody. Nobody's talking about where's the opportunity for young men to make a living for them. It's completely an obscured reality. Nobody talks about who owns the oil. As a result, society's breaking down. I mean, when men can't make enough to bring bread to the table and reality stops making sense and everyone's in debt and they're just like, I'm trying to make a living, but I keep having to take out loans. I'm squeezed out in these small houses packed like sardines, and we're just debt that we keep taking out. Insurmountable debt. And how do people deal with that? How do people articulate it? They go, who's the most badass, strong guy in history that the History Channel told me? Yeah, it was Hitler. And this is the first form of consciousness people have based on what the establishment wants for the controlled opposition. The controlled opposition has captured the opposition, and they've censored the revolutionaries. They've censored the Haases. They've put down they've tried to discredit the Jacksons. They've tried to discredit the Haases. Why is it that I am as erased and unknown as I am? Jackson's unavoidable, by the way. But Jackson's not the ideologist. I'm the ideologist. Jackson is putting the ideology into practice and giving us results. He's giving us results in terms of news and articulating current events. But that alone is not going to win the consciousness of the youth. That's why the establishment, I mean, they've tried to get rid of Jackson. They deleted his YouTube. They've gone after him every which way. And then the strategy they had for me was to erase my existence. Ask yourself a simple question. Why is it that Haz al-Din does not dominate these spaces? You just heard me debate Orthodox canonist who's responsible for a number of viral tweets talking about Judeo-Bolshevism. I asked him simple questions about how the Bolsheviks could have... No answer. I dominate all of these people. They can't debate me. I am literally the undefeated. And they run away from me in debate. You saw how Jay Dyer really tried to escape debating me. And he barely debated me under conditions that could not possibly be conducive to a real debate. So you guys need to understand, although we are not the most openly reviled, let me put it this way, Nazis are more openly reviled, but simultaneously they are the controlled opposition. We are not the most openly reviled, but we are the most persecuted. And how do I know we're the most persecuted? Why is it all explicitly anti-communist? I mean, there's not even a communist movement. Where's the explicit anti-communism coming from? From us. All of those memes you see on your timeline about how the Jews created communism, Marxism, communism. That's not directed against Barack Obama. We're not living in 2010 anymore. That's not directed against Hillary Clinton. That's not being directed against the Democrats. That's being directed against us, the MAGA communists, quote unquote. If you don't understand that MAGA communists were isolated and chosen as the #1 political threat in terms of these incipient online ideological communities, you're being dishonest. Yes, we were literally isolated as the #1 threat. Like, they had to neutralize us at all costs. The first leftist tweets against us, 20,000 plus views. Sorry, likes. It was all AstroTurf from the beginning. And then over the years, what did they start doing? They started boosting the neo-Nazis as a counter to us. Now they're boosting the Judeo-Bolshevism thing. It's perfect for the Zionists. It's perfect for the people in power. It's a perfect fucking situation, right? It reinforces the Zionist worldview, and it discredits us in the eyes of our own potential audiences, who are young, military able, and aged young men. The backbone of every political movement that wants change. Young men hungry for change. This is the plain truth of the matter. If anything, I want you all to be cognizant of the fact, I have it confirmed. Yes, we are not only on the radar of the feds in America, we are on the radar of multiple governments. Multiple. More than one. I don't say this shit talking nonsense out of my ass. When you hear me say this, trust, I mean it. Trust I mean what I'm talking about, and I'm not bullshitting you and telling you bullshit. I'm not a clown who's over-exaggerating my own importance and significance. We've been on the radar of a lot of different governments. More than you'd think, at least. Johnny, as someone who doesn't fully agree, why the hell can't we just come together and get a game plan together? See, here's the thing, Johnny. We used to believe in this idea of a popular front and ideology doesn't matter, because we were very confident in our own ideology and its power. But trust me when I tell you this, they are the ones who sabotage that first. From the beginning. And the most Fed infiltrated, put it this way, it's an old parable. The only people more infiltrated by Feds than leftists are rightists. And it's federal infiltration. I don't know what else to tell you. It's Feds. It's Feds. That's why. The Feds won. That's what I'm trying to say. We are not the ideological fanatics, blind to the pragmatic realities. They are the ones who acted dishonorably. And we didn't want an alliance with them, but we were willing to have patience with people who we believed were misled ideologically, instead of just going to war with people just because they disagree with us. But the war was chosen by them. And now they fulfill the role that the Nazis fulfilled, which was an anti-communist role. How do we counter the Feds? Well, Haas has a plan. Haas al-Din has a plan for that. So don't you worry about that. I am 2-3 steps ahead of these people. And I'm going in the direction that I'm going in for a very good reason. So be mindful of that. It's all part of a plan. Trust the plan, literally. But I would just like everyone to be aware of the situation. The situation is this. As we enter 2024, the neo-Nazi ideology, just like we find in Ukraine, is starting to be at the forefront of American. It's never been the case, but it's now the case. And it's all falling into the hands of the Zionists. Neo-Nazism serves Zionism. It's got Fed written all over it. And it's not just about JQers. How many of you guys, one's in the chat, if you're starting to see a lot of vitriolic anti-black shit, like all this real hatred to black people by the same people, Mexicans, you name it. And what does that even mean? It means it's an all-out cannibalism. It's racial hatred. It's race wars. Who does that serve? I mean, study the history. Where does that even come from? That was never a grassroots thing that just came spontaneously. It's always been a response to the class war. Mexicans, blacks, Muslims too. You want to know how much holy wars I'm starting to see between Christians and Muslims? Christians talking about how Muhammad is not allowed in Europe or America. Oh, Muslims this. I mean, it's like, look, listen, it's not about the Jews. That's their gateway drug. They go after the Jews. Look, I understand if you're Muslim, you're looking at what's going on in Gaza. You're looking at what the Zionists are doing at Gaza. And it's very simple to just start hating the Jews. But please understand me when I tell you this. They only come after the Jews first. When Hitler came after the Jews first, what did he do? He went to the Slavic lands and he fucking killed and raped 30 million people. Russians. Total cannibalism. So they're going to come for Jews first. Not Zionists, by the way. And then they're going to come for the Muslims. And they're already doing it. It's a gateway drug to racial hatred in general. And you need to understand that. This is not about the Jews. There's very few Jews. I agree. There's very few of them. They're not that relevant. I'm not saying all this just to protect Jews, because I understand there's 8 billion people in the world. Everyone needs protection, right? I'm not playing favorites. I'm telling you, this topic is a gateway drug. You may not be against marijuana, but it's a gateway drug. You understand? I'm against hatred against Jews, by the way, but I'm telling you why I am stressing the importance to not fall into this trap and this trick is because that's part one. Part two is total cannibalism. Race war all around. If you start hating Jews, you're going to start hating Mexicans, black people, Muslims, and your fellow whites. And then what are you going to be left with? Nothing. You're going to have everything in your life stolen and taken away from you in the rubble and ashes of a destroyed country. And who's going to benefit from that? The real estate developers that want to fucking kick you out of your house and depopulate. That's who. They're going to have this fucking race war shit. And then some Meghan Markle's gonna come and be the dictator to restore peace and restore harmony and restore humanity. Understand how the elites work. They create the very conditions that justify themselves. They create COVID and then give you the vaccine. You understand how it works? They create the problem and then give you their solution. So they're gonna create the problem of racial hatred and the revival of neo-Nazi ideology. And then they're going to give you the solution. And the solution's almost as bad as the problem, if not worse. And to see so many people getting duped by this and fall into this vortex, shame. Shame. I don't fall into this. Privately, I'm a very, very racist person in private. But you see, when you're in your group chats with your boys, it's not that serious. It's not serious racism. You don't actually hate people. It's just funny. It's like the racism of Marx and Engels. They weren't serious about it, but it's just funny. It's just part of being a human being. But then I say, you really hate these people? They want to turn white against black, black against white, Christian against Muslim. Who benefits? This is the inevitable result, by the way. Do not think for a second that the Hitlerites will be satisfied. If let's say you're a person who doesn't really have a lot of honor, meaning you don't care about all the honorable Jews who are innocent. You don't care about them, right? Let's say you're that type of person. Who cares about these Jews, right? Okay, fine. Do you think the Hitlerites are going to be satisfied just going after the Jews? Do you think that? Do you think they're going to have their little hunger satiated just going after the Jews? Let me tell you something. That's not even going to be the first appetizer. Forget the appetizer. That's not even the free bread that they give you before the appetizer. You understand? The full course meal is Liberia, cannibalism, true barbarism. Some people want this, but no. Chaos by itself is not as revolutionary as a new state, a new authority, a new order. I know the Nazis have polluted that term, new order, but theirs was a new order. Theirs was just an old anarchy, a true new order. That's what's revolutionary. Liberia is how you get Meghan Markle or Hillary Clinton or some other Pinochet to come and quote-unquote restore the old order. True chaos is not chaotic. True chaos is not itself chaotic. Remember that. Remember I told you that. Anyone who believes in America doesn't believe in racial wars. You're trying to weaken our historical country. And I'm not saying weaken the government. I'm saying you're trying to weaken our country. You're trying to weaken the people of this country. See, this is another thing. I don't know. I'm like a psychologist, and I'm trying to look you in the eyes and tell you you have a mental disorder. You guys think I'm Jewish. You guys think I'm Jewish. I'm a Shia, 100% by blood. Shia, Jnubi, from South Lebanon, who, let's just say, has relatives of relatives of relatives who gave their lives fighting Israel. There is nobody in your white nationalist group chat who hates Israel more than me. It was put into my DNA. I was born and raised with it. You understand? And you think I'm a Jew. How do you not realize you have a mental disorder? The same thing that compels you to think I'm a Jew is the same thing that compels you to think that communism was Jewish. You think communism is Jewish just like you think I'm a Jew. Or RTSG, who put out that article. There's not a single Jew in RTSG. There's not a single Jew in the infrared collective. There's no Jewish showrunners, none. So how are you not mentally ill? How are you not mentally ill? I mean, if I was Jewish, I would just tell you. I'm not ashamed of it. Listen to what Hassan Nasrallah said. You want to talk about Zionism? There's not a single person in your little stupid white nationalist group chat more anti-Zionist than Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. And listen to what he says about Zionism.
يعني إذا إسرائيل استهدفت إيران حتى ولو كان لوحدها
في خطأ موجود بالعالم العربي بموضوع علاقات إسرائيل وأمريكا، وبنرجع بنعيد وبنرجع بنكرر وهاي إنه اليهود هن حاكمين أمريكا وهن بياخذوا القرار وهن عاملين وهن مساويين. أمريكا هي صاحبة القرار. بأمريكا في شركات كبرى، في مثلث ثالوث شركات.
Wow. Look who he's naming. The oil companies, the weapons industry,
شركات النفط، شركات السلاح، وما يسمى بالصهيونية المسيحية.
the evangelicals. He named the corporations.
هذا التحالف. إسرائيل كانت في الماضي أداة بريطانية والآن هي أداة أمريكية.
Look at that. Is Nasrallah a Jew? He's Israel's #1 enemy. There's no one Israel wants to kill more than him. Is he controlled by the Jews? Is he scared to JQ? Why would Sayyid Nasrallah be scared to JQ? Why would he be scared to JQ? There is nobody who fought Israel more than this man. He's saying the same things I say. Why would I trust some pencil neck little bitch white nationalist who just can consume some BitChute documentaries and was on some stupid internet forums over this man when it comes to Israel? Why should I trust some degenerate basement-dwelling 4chaner over Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah? This whole thing glows. It glows. The Hitlerism that you're seeing on your timelines is a coordinated campaign. It's being done deliberately. And the people behind it know what they're doing. Believe that. Trust that they know what they're doing. And no, it's not what it seems at face value. And not a single one of them will debate me. Ask yourself why. Why won't a single one of them debate me? Look at this. 6,000 likes. Here's a source of 20th century for confused people. Jewish communists killed the Russian Tsar. By the way, I have to say something about this. There is no proof that the remains of the Romanovs have ever been found. Did you know that? Even the Orthodox Church didn't recognize those remains in the funeral. We don't even know what really happened to those bodies. They began a campaign of murder and starvation known as the Red Terror. The starvation had nothing to do with Red Terror. That had everything to do with a fucking civil war, you dumbass. Hitler and the Nazis rose up in opposition to the communists. That's true, but they didn't rise up. They were deployed as a tool against the communists. Because the reason Russia was having economic problems was because of how backward was it. So if the communists took power in... You want to know what the British's worst nightmare was? If communists took power in Germany, if Bolshevism was triumphant in Germany, and then Germany and Russia united... Oh my God, the fucking British Empire would have been blown up in one day. Had communists taken Germany, and then Germany united with the USSR into one thing, Germany's industrial power plus Russia's agriculture and raw materials would have created an invincible power. There would be no hunger. There would be no homelessness. There would have never been any World War II. There would have never been any pointless conflict and death and destruction. There'd be no Vietnam War. There'd be none of that. There'd be no OnlyFans. There'd be no pornography. People would live happy lives had that happened. The world would have been better off. But who stopped it? The British. The British and their dogs, the white migrants that came from Russia to Germany from the Tsar's aristocracy and propagated this disgusting filth which the Nazis took and ran with. It was the parasitic dynastic elite of Europe. The Allied forces helped the Jew communists defeat the Nazis. This person's a liar or they're ignorant. Because again, by 1939, there is no prominence of any Jews in any department of the Soviet state. So how is it Jew communists who defeated the Nazis? The Nazis who were anti-globalist equivalent in the 1930s, that's not true. The Nazis were still making payments to the Bank of International Settlements and had representatives in Switzerland during World War II drawing up meetings to set interest rates for the Bank of International Settlements during the war itself. And their business ties to Wall Street never ended during the war itself. IG Farben was a private company. It wasn't even owned by the state. It was owned by international financial capital. So what are you saying? That they were anti-globalists? You don't know what you're talking about. The Jews began an 80-year campaign of lies and propaganda to fool white nations into believing they were the good guys. That's not true. The communists were immediately demonized after the war. Stalin had to write a book called The Falsifiers of History because what the liberals who created the Nazis, by the way, were starting to say was that actually Stalin and Hitler did the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, meaning they were allied, and actually the Soviets were not anti-Nazi. They were themselves crypto-fascists. So they immediately slandered the Soviet Union. They didn't call the Soviets the good guys. They demonized the Soviet Union. And they still do, by the way. Americans are now living in real time what Hitler fought to prevent in Germany. No, we are inching closer to what Hitler actually established in Germany, which was the terroristic dictatorship of financial capital. Name a single degenerate aspect of America right now, and it was present in Nazi Germany. It's just that a lot of it was behind closed doors. You think that LGBT wasn't widespread in yes, it was. It was extremely widespread in the SS. It just was not too open, out in the open. But it was very, very aggressively there. Please educate yourself before spewing Jewish propaganda. Where did this tweet 1 million views? Why are they targeting communists? Because they're targeting us. We are the ones they're trying to counter-signal. Remember that. This is against us. There's no one else. You say, well, no, they're talking about the PSL, Haas. The PSL has been around for how many years? The peak of the PSL was 2020, not now. It was more relevant back then. You think they're counter-signaling the established leftists? No, they're not. Those guys are starting to weaken as the neo-Nazis march and are on the rise. People need to understand this. Liberalism and leftism are in decline. It's not on the rise. It's in decline. This is what's on the rise. Now, I agree. Infrared and Midwestern Marx style communism is on the rise. Jackson, Midwestern Marx, infrared, that stuff is gaining traction. And they've taken note of that, and that's why they're unleashing these hounds to crush us. Like, of all the leftists, there's really only 3 that are gaining ground. Jackson, infrared, Midwestern Marx. That's it. Midwestern Marx is like on TikTok, got that shit locked down. And they're very good at winning people. So it's infrared, Midwestern Marx, and Jackson that are rising. But we're not rising as fast as the neo-Nazis because of how much damage the leftists had tried to inflict on us. It's okay. We shake it off and we keep marching.